Good morning. So I think we've heard a lot about the speed at which technology can impact our lives. But what I'm going to talk about is not that, is the fact of how is it that we can adapt to all of that. Because, while there's a lot that has been spoken in digital 4.0, which is around technology, there is the other side of this revolution that needs to also keep pace, is the human side of this revolution. Because as technology is also evolving, we as human beings also need to adapt and change, because the ability for us to succeed in this world is going to come from a change in our mindset, a change in our resilience, a change in our curiosity, and eventually the courage to step outside of the comfort zones that all of us are very comfortable with to adapt to this new sort of technology. So, therefore, today's sort of talk is centered around how we as professionals can position ourselves not just to survive in this disrupted world, but actually to thrive in this. So this is not going to be a technical presentation. Just a disclaimer, I am not a techie. I have never written a single line of code in my life, right? So for all of you who sort of came thinking that they'll learn a lot more about the actual tech aspects of digital 4.0, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but this is not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about the human side of digital 4.0. So just to set the context, what do you think when people talk about digital 4.0, right? You hear all these sort of terms that get thrown at you. AI, chatbot, machine learning, deep learning, big data, all new words get sort of, thrown. But, digital 4.0 is not just about the technology. It's actually about how do we stay relevant in this new environment. What skills, attitudes, and human qualities do we need to lead through this change? And how can we as professionals, who've always dealt in trust, in precision, in judgment, bring these strengths into this digital first world? That is what I'm going to be talking about today. So this is the only technical slide I have in my entire presentation. I want all of you all to look at this slide, try and identify who this person is, but hang on to your thoughts. We will, come back to this individual a bit later in the presentation. And I'll explain to you, why is he relevant from a digital 4.0 perspective. So what comes to mind really is this quote from Peter Drucker, which says that the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It is to act with yesterday's logic. I mean, go back to your careers, right? I see many of you who are senior professionals who are sitting in this room. There have been several changes that have happened along the way in the last 20, 30, 40 years of your careers. What has kept you all as being successful professionals in all of that is your ability to adapt, is not to be stuck with the old age of this is how it was done and therefore this is how I will also do things. I mean, take for example a very simple thing which is I think now close to lots of you, which is GST. I mean, GST came up in the last 10 years. And when it came up, I'm sure many of us had the same apprehension of how will it happen, how will the reconciliations happen, this all get digitized, so on and so forth. But we have adapted to that. And that really is the key strength that all of us have as professionals and as chartered accountants. So effectively what we are saying is that with digital 4.0, the rules have shifted. The environment has changed. And the only way for us to be relevant is for us to also update our logic, to adopt to these new ways of thinking, to the new ways of learning, and eventually to the new ways of leading. So what comes to mind when you see this image? May I get some responses, please? Speed, yeah, obviously it's a F1, so there's a lot of speed. Performance, yes. Technology, absolutely, right? So there's a lot of technology that goes behind F1. The cars have got almost 120 different sensors across the entire vehicle, and what you see down there is the sort of control room in which they monitor each of these in a real-time basis. F1s also use digital twins and simulations because they can't afford to be running their cars across all the 20-odd tracks that they sort of race on an annual basis to test out the different sort of car configurations that they have. So all of this gets done through the whole digital twin and the simulations that they do of how their cars will run. You also have real-time changes that they do to how the car is functioning while the race is on. And how are they able to do that? Because they're able to see this data on a real-time basis. And the last thing that they do is that the car is actually personalized to the driver in terms of his size, in terms of how he shifts the gear, in terms of the sensitivity that he has to the steering wheel, in terms of play that he has on the accelerator and the gearbox. All of that is customized to each driver which is driving the car. So effectively what's happening in all of this is change was always there. But with Digital 4.0, the acceleration with which change is happening today has increased tremendously. If you actually compare the times that Michael Schumacher drove the cars on the same track, right? There are several sort of tracks that remain the same. If you actually compare the times that Michael drove those cars in the early 2000, 2004 sort of timeline when he was world champion for 7 years in running, and you compare that with the F1 times that you see here today, they have increased almost, or well, they have decreased almost by 6%. That's not because the drivers have become more better. It's because they have been able to use more technology to effectively make the car better, give more insight to the drivers, and that has what enabled these drivers to go 6% faster, despite all the changes that have happened to the actual vehicle. If any of you follow F1, you'll know that lots of changes have been happening to the vehicle itself to slow down the vehicle to reduce accidents. So how does all of this transform to what we do? We have to embrace AI-powered tools. In our world, we've got to do scenario modeling, use forecasting, incorporate real-time dashboards for financial reporting, experiment with automation. But more than not, we have to continuously learn about new technology and new trends as they will impact us. So the lessons that we draw from F1 is that we have to keep abreast with the speed with which these sort of changes are happening. It's not that we have to become an expert with each of these, but we have to understand them enough for us to be able to use that to our advantage. What is this? What comes to mind when you see these numbers? Sorry? Cricket score. What in cricket score? What do you think this is? Sorry? Perfect. These are bowlers' stats, right? 4 overs, 5 wickets for 21 runs. Whose do you think these stats are? Take a guess. Come on. Bumrah, right? These are the stats of Jasprit Bumrah in last year's IPL, right? When he took 5 for 21 in his 4 overs. Yeah? I'm going to play a video. I want you to hear Jasprit Bumrah. The video quality might not be very good, but listen to what he says.
Who gets 5 for 25 or 4. You have to now explain that to us.
See, I am very happy with the outcome, and obviously I will not say that, you know.
Who gets 5 for 25 or 4. You have to now explain that to us.
See, I am very happy with the outcome, and obviously I will not say that, you know, I had always thought of taking a 5-er. Yes, the wicket was a little sticky for the first 10 overs, and then quickly observed that and trying to use it to my advantage. One of those days where all of those things worked in my favor, all the catches went to hand. So very happy with the contribution.
Another thing, you know, along with the skills that you have, the experience, the other mystery element, which not too many other bowlers who bowl in the death have, is that they have no idea which line you're going to bowl, because you don't bowl the obvious wide outside the off-stump line, or the field is not set in a way where the batter sometimes has, you know, some kind of an idea what line you're going to bowl.
So in this format, it's anyways very harsh on the bowler, so you have to have all kinds of skills. So this is what I train for, that come this situation, I should have different options. I should not be a one-trick pony, or I should just not rely on my Yorker, because there will be days where my execution is off, so I can rely on other deliveries. So this is what I had worked on early on in my career as well, that should not be a one-trick pony. Everybody's doing their research, data, and all of that comes in, so people start to line you up. So I wanted to have different skills and different sets, so very happy that I could use it.
Yeah, just looking at the whole event, the Tata IPL on the whole, you have a lot of young fast bowlers, you know, bowling in the death, finding it very tough, and they have certain tactics, doesn't work on the night. I know it's not fair, you're playing currently, but is there anything that you would want to suggest some of the other bowlers who don't do the job as well as you do, without being too modest, but be nice for them to get some insight?
Yeah, it's obviously tough, but bowling is tough because you'll have to take a beating, you'll have to have bad days to learn from it. But what I have done in the past is, whenever I've had a bad day, whatever has not worked, next day, or the calm mind, I've seen the videos, what has not worked, why did it not work, what is the way I've been playing. So all of these things you have to be with the curve, because nowadays you just cannot come on the day and see, okay, I'll do this, maybe this will work. So you're hoping for success. So for me, preparation is always the key. When you prepare hard, you put yourself under pressure in the nets, you bowl to batters who can hit big sixes, you bowl to them, you see how you react to stress, you see how you react to pressure, then you start finding answers. So that is very, very important for me, to keep pushing yourself in training. Then in game day, you have answers that, okay, when I had the similar pressure in training, I had answers.
I hate to keep players here for a long time. Final question, given a choice, the line that you would want to bowl in the death, would it be the often used Yorker line outside off stump? You still prefer attacking the stump because of the advantage, and can everyone bowl that line?
No, not like that. It's not like one trick pony, because I do my research, I see where the batter is strong. Sometimes, the wicket is sticky. You don't need to always bowl a Yorker. Sometimes you can use your bouncer, you can use your slower ball. So you don't need to use all tricks on one day. You have to understand where the game is going, what kind of a wicket is. There is no ego in this format. Even if you bowl 145, but the wicket demands you to bowl slow ball, so you have to do that. So all of these things are very important. It's not like that one trick pony that just aim at the stump and go bowl hunting.
Well, thanks very much for that insight, and once again, tremendous performance. Thanks for giving us that.
Okay, so we heard Jasprit Bumrah give a very rare post-match interview, which is rather detailed, right? So let's understand what he said, right? He used the word research a lot. I do my research about the batsman I'm going to be bowling to. I don't want to be a one-trick pony. What does that mean? It means that he needs to have different balls in his arsenal to be able to bowl to different batsmen. I have to understand the environment and bowl accordingly. I can't bowl 145 all the time. I have to bowl a slow ball if required. I don't rely on hope. I prepare. I practice in pressure situations. I go back to the nets. What does that mean? That is that he is actually preparing for the match situation much before. He's not just relying on his natural sort of skills that, of course, we know that he has. He used the word, there is no ego. Bowling is tough. Very similar to our work that we do. In lots of things, if we let our ego come in the way into tough situations, we may not end up on the winning side. Push myself during training. He emphasizes the importance of training. And finally, he says, is reflection. If I've had a bad day, I go back, I look at my videos with a calm mind, I try and figure out what went wrong, and I go back in the nets the next day, and I try and rectify that defect. There's a lot that we can learn from Jasprit Bumrah in the way that we approach our work as well. As we think about Digital 4.0 being new in that sense, how do we get there? And I'm going to encourage you to practice in what I'm calling as low-stakes experimentation. Don't try and go the whole big bang, right? Adopt a growth mindset. Adopt an agile learning methodology. What does that mean? Unlike in the way that all of us learned in the past, which was we spent X amount of time in learning something, and at the end of it, we emerged as sort of educated in that. That is not how learning is happening today. Learning is today happening in smaller bites. It's happening as we go along. It's happening through making mistakes. Learning is happening through engaging with others. And which is why staying connected to peer learning groups, learning in small increments, learning from your mistakes becomes that much more important in how you are able to develop this mindset of saying, I'm curious, I want to understand. I mean, we just saw this whole presentation earlier. How did this happen? What are the tools and techniques that were used to be able to generate these sort of analysis that we just saw? We have to have that sort of curiosity in all that we do. What is this? Come on, you all guys are football-loving Calcutta guys, right? So everybody should know what this is. What is this? Loud up, yeah, I can't hear you. This is the VAR, right? So this is the virtual assistant referee system that's been there now in football for the last few years. What does this do? Effectively, it is giving the on-field referee a technology aid to make a better decision. Right? How often have we gone home from games saying, oh, referee messed it up, right? So here is one more tool that's available for the referee, because finally he's the guy who's meant to make an ethical judgment. Let me give you a few scenarios. In the 2022 World Cup, in the final match versus Argentina versus France, yeah, there's a penalty that was given in the end part of that game. It appeared as if the French defender had fouled the Argentinian sort of forward, and the referee gave a penalty. But before he did that, he consulted the VAR. The VAR showed a very soft touch that the French defender had done to the Argentinian sort of forward. But the rules were the rules. And the rules dictated that if a defender would obstruct a goal-scoring opportunity while in the D, the outcome needs to be a penalty. And therefore the penalty was given and the penalty was scored. So here's an instance where human judgment was enhanced through the use of technology. Pretty much what I am going to encourage all of you all to do. Unlike what was perhaps said in the first session, technology is not taking over. It's how we use the technology to make better decisions, I think, is the crux of this game. There was another game which happened in the English Premier League, where there seemed to be a foul. The VAR did not catch it. The referee went and he sort of saw it. He couldn't see it on the VAR, and he went on with the game. The team that lost lodged a protest. And then they re-examined the VAR from other angles. And from the other angles, they actually found that, yes, there was a foul. And in that case, a penalty had to be given. But the referee had messed up. What does that prove? It effectively proves that technology is not infallible. Finally, judgment will be made. And there are times that technology may fail you. We have to be alive to that. In this case, it cost that team a game. Who knows what it may cost us? So what are the learnings that we have from this? We've all heard the term data bias, right? Somebody said garbage in, garbage out earlier. That effectively is data bias. If you, all of you all, have gone to DeepSeek, which is the Chinese version of the ChatGPT, and you put in questions that the Chinese government might not like you asking them, and it gives you an answer that is sort of prejudged. What is that? It's a bias that is there in how the responses will be given to you, right? Similarly, in all the tools that we use today, there is an inherent bias of the responses that you'll get out of it. It's not that ChatGPT is 100% correct. There is a bias to it. We have to be aware of that. We have to protect data privacy, because finally all the data that you're putting out there is going into a cloud, and that now becomes accessible to any and everybody. So if you're putting in information which is private and confidential, then it's no longer private and confidential. And if we have to act as ethical advisors, we have to understand AI and the other technology models, and then be able to appropriately guide our clients. Okay, one more set of statistics. What do you think this is? Obviously, you see Barcelona, Bayern, Munich, so you know it's football, right? But what do you think this is? Stats of? Very good. These are the stats of one of the most successful football managers today, which is Pep Guardiola. Right? Pep has been the manager of Manchester City now since 2015, under whose leadership Manchester City has won multiple titles over the last 10 years. Now, Pep himself wasn't a very accomplished footballer. Yes, he did play for Barcelona, and he played under the great Johan Cruyff at that time when he was playing. And Johan Cruyff was a great strategist, and therefore he brought strategy into football. Pretty much the same sort of mindset with which Pep manages the Man City football team. The speed with which he makes decisions while the game is on. If you actually see how Man City plays, they may start with a 4-4-3 combination when the game starts, but midway through the game, he is not afraid to change that formation to a 3-5-2 formation or some other formation, because the game demands that, because the opposition is playing a different game from what their earlier strategy was, based on which they had earlier thought that 4-4-3 will work, but now that they are playing a different formation, I have to adapt to that in a real-time basis, and therefore the adaptation happens. In the 2021 English Premier League sort of season, he actually moved his central defender in between the defense line and the midfield. Because what he saw happening in real life games was that the ball passing from the defenders into the midfielders wasn't happening as seamlessly. And therefore, he had John Barnes, who was the sort of center back, actually begun sort of playing in a slightly forward position, acting as a link between the defenders and the midfielders. And that was a masterstroke that won him the FA League title in that year, because he had done something which nobody had thought of doing before. Was a very unique sort of formation. So what do we learn from Pep in this digital sort of 4.0 world? We have to move away from this periodic reporting into real-time reporting, pretty much what was shown to us in the earlier presentation. It's not that you've got to wait for July, August, September, after the March year end, for us to understand what's happened as of March. You have to know that on the 1st of April, at the stroke of midnight. You have to adopt agile methodologies to get there. It's not that if you have done something and you've arrived at one solution, that solution holds good for any and every situation that you deal with going ahead. You have to have multiple options available for you to deal with what solution might be the right solution for the instances going forward. And you have to leverage data for immediate decision making. He's not doing this with gut. He has enough data. He is seeing it live. He's taking all this data, but then he is overlaying all of that with his judgment, his experience, and that's how he's making these decisions. Okay, one more set of statistics. Now, these obviously are cricket statistics, right? So, whose do you think these statistics are? Rahul Dravid, right? So, this is Rahul Dravid. What were his traits as a batsman? Sorry? Technique was amongst the strongest of his suites, right? But when he came into bat, you felt relieved. ठीक है, he'll sort of stick on, right? He'll hold one end up. Right? That's what all of us felt when Rahul Dravid went into bat, because his sort of technique was, well, as right as technique can be. He was an honest man. He evolved his role. Did all of you all see Rahul Dravid keeping wickets? Yeah, he's not a wicket keeper. But because the team demanded that a front-end batsman also keep wickets, in the days when you didn't have the MS Dhonis, who were the wicket-keeper batsmen sort of days, and you had the sort of wicket-keeper who could bat a little bit type of scenarios, he was the one who put his hand up to say, I will learn the art of wicket-keeping, and he kept wickets. Even though as the number one, as a one-down batsman, he would have to bat for long sort of periods of time, and therefore a huge strain on his physical fitness. So he was the ultimate team man. But then Rahul Dravid became this. Can you see him in the middle over there? That's him winning the World Cup in 2019 with the India under-19 team. You can see many of the faces over there who are today in the senior team. Right? Shubman Gill obviously in the front, there's Arshdeep behind, and many others. What was the transition that happened from Rahul Dravid, the technically perfect batsman, to Rahul Dravid, the under-19 coach that is winning World Cups, to Rahul Dravid, the coach of the senior team that then went on to win the Senior World Cup? What's happening from the individual contributor role that he was playing to the coach role that he played in under-19 to the coach role that he played for the men's Senior Cup? I think that is what we have to all think about as professionals. When we begin our careers, we are all individual contributors. We are all doers. We work under the supervision and guidance of somebody, and we get better and better at what we do. But as we get senior, we tend to work with two sets of constituents. We will work with SMEs or MSMEs. We will work with startups, where they look up to you as their coach, their guide, telling you all how to adapt their current businesses to Digital 4.0. And then you may work with the large corporations, where your role isn't one of that, of telling them what to do, but in being their sounding board. Right? Rahul Dravid didn't need to tell Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli how to bat. He didn't need to tell Jasprit Bumrah how to bowl. He had to guide them together to achieve the success that they did. But in the under-19 team, he had to tell them how to bat and how to bowl. It's the same person who has evolved from being the individual into a coach, into a mentor. And that's pretty much the life cycle that all of us need to go through as we get senior in our careers. And that brings on new opportunities. So while our profession is built on technical rigor, ethics, trust, right? That's what all of us embody as chartered accountants. We have to help businesses build future-ready systems, ESG frameworks, AI integrated finance systems. All of these things are now a reality. And we as chartered accountants have to be able to guide our clients in making them ready to be able to adapt to this new sort of situation. We have to be a strategic advisor, not necessarily the technical advisor. That's the point I want to make to you, that you don't have to be scared of Digital 4.0, of saying, oh, I don't know how this technology works. But knowing that there is a technology like this, how can this be adapted to solve the problem that my client is facing? That is what is the role that we as CAs need to adapt to. What do we see here? Vishwanathan Anand, yes. What else do we see here? Yeah, not many of you recognize that bald man behind there, right? We aren't very familiar with the role of the arbiter. But every chess game has an arbiter. The gentleman that you see in the middle, he is the arbiter of this chess match. He plays a role almost similar to a referee, where his role is to ensure that the chess games which are being played are actually being played in a fair environment. In 1972, the year I was born, there was a chess match, for the World Cup. For the sort of world sort of championship between Fischer and Anatoly of the USSR. It was at the height of the Cold War. It was seen as a proxy war between the US and the USSR, because at that time there was no Russia, there was the entire USSR was there. And the Russian was the reigning world champion, and Fischer was his sort of challenger. And that match went through a lot of stuff outside of chess, of how these players would be seated, where these players would be seated, how the match would be played, what were the rules under which the match would be played, all of it. And this almost became like an international incident, because it wasn't just individual A sparring with individual B, it was USA sparring with USSR. And in that situation, it was the chess arbiter who stepped in and ensured that the game was finally played. The game got over. Fischer won and hasn't been seen since then, actually. and is widely acclaimed that the pressure that he was put under to win that world championship got him stressed and he left the sport. So effectively, it is the role of governance in this age of AI that we have to be alive to as well. How does that happen? Audit trails. There has to be audit trails for us to understand how did we arrive at a particular decision. We keep talking about cybersecurity protocols, but we have to have that for us to have confidence in the data that we are using to make decisions. We have to regularly audit and review the AI systems to ensure that the bias that might have crept into any of these is being appropriately dealt with or at least understood. But the role, the mentality of governance that we have plays a very, very critical role in how these systems are implemented. As you would have seen from my introduction, I recently changed roles from being a chartered accountant into a VC, and I deal with a lot of sort of companies who come to us for funding, young professionals out of IITs and other tech colleges. And this whole concept of governance is alien to them. They don't understand it. For them, it's not even a speed breaker. It is like a wall. That's their mindset. And the outcome of that is for all of us to see, right? We've seen enough of failures along the way for startups, for younger companies, which have evolved because of lack of governance. Does anybody recognize this picture? It's from a very, very popular Netflix serial. It's amongst the sort of 10 highest watched serials in history so far. If not, I'm going to encourage you to go and watch it. It's called The Queen's Gambit. What you see there, that young lady out there, her name is Elizabeth Harmon, and she is, again, a US citizen. She is playing this Russian who is the world champion, and this was the final match of that entire tournament where she is sort of facing this guy for the world championship. I'm going to play for you a scene from that movie. I want you to pay attention to what Beth is doing, right? The situation is that this is game 2 out of a best of 3. This is game 2. She has lost the first game. This is game 2 in the best of 3 finals. And she is playing this gentleman.
Shit. He's not doing what he's supposed to do.
he's offering Elizabeth Harmon one. If she accepts, she leaves the stage in a tie with the world champion. If they play on, once the dust settles and the endgame emerges, she could find herself in a very different position. Borghoff is death on endgames. He's famous for it. Harmon, on the other hand, is not. She's more known for coming out early and strong, demoralizing her opponents from the start. So I think she should accept the draw. The world will see it as a solid achievement. A draw, however, is not a win. And the one thing we know about Elizabeth Harmon is that she loves to win.
Right? So
एक बुजुर्ग मारवाड़ी व्यापारी ने बिजनेस की ऐसी जोरदार टिप दी, उसने कहा भैया देख
Sorry for that.
है वो हमारे सामने ही काम नहीं करते, पीछे क्या करेंगे? ऐसे व्यापारी
Right. So we saw that midway through this game, or midway through this scene, she looks up at the ceiling and she sort of visualizes the chessboard out there, and she is sort of playing the moves out there, trying to figure out as to what will happen next. And then she makes her move with very decisiveness, and you can see the expression on Borghoff's face when she does that he's startled as to what he's seeing. So, what is this really happening? So this is what I want to call as a rise of the augmented accountant. I mean, pretty much how Elizabeth Harmon used her mind in this case to sort of think ahead, to sort of strategize. We as chartered accountants now have the ability to use the digital 4.0 tool set that we have with us for us to rise as the augmented accountant. We will always remain accountants, but we now have a secret superpower, which are all the digital 4.0 tools that people will speak about for us to do our job better. Because at the end of the day, exactly what Beth Harmon did, it's not that technology made the move for her. She made the move, right? So she is using technology to her advantage, and that's pretty much what we have to do as well. The opportunity for us is that we have to stop fearing the ceiling and start looking up. So how do we do that? We have to develop skills to interpret AI. It's not for us to understand AI, it's for us to interpret AI. We have to leverage AI for predictive analytics, use RPA for administrative tasks, adopt data visualization to drive home your points. We all know who this is? Yeah? But let me give you a very interesting statistic, right? This is Dhoni signaling DRS, right? I don't want the sound. That's fine. His DRS success rate as CSK captain is 85.7%. He gets 85% of his DRS signals right. Right? How does he do that? It tells us a few things. The first is that he is using his instinct behind the stumps and his experience to make the call of saying, which one to pick and which one to not. The only person he consults before he does that is the bowler, because the bowler has a front-end view. Obviously, he has the advantage of being the wicket keeper, therefore he can see things in a very different perspective. But he doesn't go for DRS each and every time. Often he says no. Even if the bowler, even if he's Jadeja, will come to him and ask him for DRS. If you see the way he also makes a signal, it's very cool and calm. There's no excitement about it. He will walk up from behind the stumps, he'll have a quick word with the bowler, and he'll make his decision of either this or walk back to behind the stumps. And if you see, nobody else comes around him when he's doing it, because everybody else, even if you're the sort of close-in fielders, nobody comes and has a chat with him, unlike what you see in other teams, where 3 or 4 players will converge and they'll all have a chat and then they'll make the call. Right? So, here is somebody who is using DRS or using technology to his advantage. But do you know what his percentage of success is as India captain? 41%. His success as India captain is 41%. In fact, Faf du Plessis has a 57% success rate as a South Africa captain. So he hasn't been very good in DRS as an India captain. Why? Perhaps, and that's my logic, is that he stopped being India captain many, many years ago. But he continues as CSK. So experience plays a huge role in how you are able to leverage technology to your benefit. And that's the key learning that comes out of this example, that finally it's your human skill that will define success. Because the DRS technology is what it is. It is available to everybody. The same technology has remained by and large the same for the last many, many, many years. There haven't been any huge advancements that have happened in the whole DRS technology itself. It's just how the players are using that. So, focus on your soft skills of how you communicate. Cultivate the curiosity to be open to new ideas. Develop trust with your clients. Just as he has developed trust with his teammates, develop trust with your clients for them to take your judgment that much more seriously. But also invest in mentoring your younger professionals. I've shown you this picture before. Can somebody tell me now who this person is? Eliud Kipchoge. And what did Eliud do? He's a multiple world champion across multiple distances, but he's the only human being till now who has run the marathon under 2 hours. He ran that marathon about 4 or 5 years ago in Austria. He ran 1:59:40, the time that you see behind. And this entire campaign was called, I believe, No Human is Limited. Until then, and since then, and this happened in 2019, nobody has run the marathon in less than 2 hours. So how did he do that? He had the use of technology. He had these Nike Alpha shoes, which had a metal plate in it, which gave him a 4% extra bounce, energy sort of retrieval to run the marathon. He had 41 elite pacers who ran in a V formation in front of him to reduce the wind resistance that comes on him. And these 41 runners kept changing. They chose this course in Austria because it was flat and you had no ups and downs. You ran this when the temperature was 9 degrees centigrade, which is considered to be the optimum running temperature, and you see those guidelines on the road, the exact route that he had to run was mapped out. He also had this laser dot on the road from the car ahead of him that exactly showed him where he has to be if he has to break the 2-hour record. So effectively here you have a situation where a human being, the same human being, is using technology to do something that nobody has done before. Unfortunately, because of all of these things, it's not recognized as a world record, and the world record is still sort of 2 hours and 1 minute something. But he ran this under 2 hours. And that's a huge example of how we as humans can use technology to do something that nobody has ever done before. So I'm going to end by saying that the future really belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in creative ways. It's not about mastering every new app or every new platform that pops up. It's about being multidimensional. It's about growing our own skill sets, not just vertically but horizontally as well. It's about combining what we already know, our deep financial and analytical capabilities, with these new tools, with this new thinking. And yes, we have to be slightly more creative in how we put that all together to our own advantage. Thank you very much for your attention.